Hello and welcome to computer class. My name is Dave, and today we are talking about the introduction to HTML. And I want to start out by discussing what is the languages, the main languages for web development. Because if you're learning HTML, you are learning a framework for the web. And so HTML actually stands for Hypertextual Markup Language. That being said, it is usually coupled with two other languages, and there are lots of languages on the web, but these are the major three, so they're very important. CSS, which stands for Cascading Style Sheets, and JS, or JavaScript. So these three core languages are how a lot of people write websites. And there are lots of add-ons and blocks of code that you can link to on the web that are written in these languages. However, these are the base um, languages that you might use for a website. And so learning the ins and outs of them is what makes good front-end web development. And so hypertextual markup language would be the topic of this class, actually, and these lessons that are subsequently following. So how does each language contribute to a website? Well, HTML provides the essential structure. It's kind of like if you were to put a Tupperware container inside itself. So you've seen those Tupperwares that like stack inside each other, or plastic containers that stack each other. That's what HTML is. It's the container language that stores the elements that are on a website. And then CSS controls how a page looks. It controls colors and attributes of things that you see all over websites. And then JS, or JavaScript, controls how a page behaves, whether it be some sort of a uh, rotating carousel, or whether it be a modal that pops down, or some sort of attribute that actually moves, or something that's uh, does something as a result of the user interacting with the web page. A lot of that is controlled by JavaScript. Now, some of it can be controlled by CSS, but most of it's controlled by JavaScript, and you'd have to write a script in order to do that. Okay, and the functionality there. The history of HTML: in 1991, a very important date, Tim Berners-Lee published a book entitled HTML Tags and started a revolution on the web. 1995 to 1997, HTML2, HTML1, 4.0 are released. So between there was generations of HTML, the language is kind of developed, and we have had to change around and make certain um, tags or markups improved to go with how the web's developed. And in W3C, which I'll talk about them in just a second, released XHTML 1.0 in 2000, and that kind of started a whole revolution as well. 2007, W3C again creates HTML5 working group and adopts the WhatWG's Web Application 1.0 specification. And that's exactly what HTML5 is. It's a web specification. HTML5 is it might be 5 point something, whatever we're on. That is the current establishment of HTML. So if someone was to ask, you learned HTML5 in this course as a general rule there. Okay, so that's pretty important as well. Two specifications for the web, and these are companies that are working on these. The first is the W3C, the World Wide Web Consortium. It is a main international standards organization for the World Wide Web, and they control these consortiums. What they do is they take care of and handle either the creation of new tags and also the listing of the specification for HTML5. And then WhatWG is another one, Web Hypertext Application Technology Working Group, is a community of people interested in evolving HTML and related technologies, and you can find their links here on this at these URLs that you see on screen. Okay. Next, in order to write HTML, you need a piece of software called a code editor. So a good HTML editor can speed up the process and catch syntax errors that you might miss. So it's good to pick out a decent code editor. Now you could technically use Notepad on your computer. Technically, it's just fairly difficult to do so. And you'll see why once we start writing it. Most people prefer the the line numbers that you see here, the code formatting options, the syntax highlighting in the colors, coordination, that way you can see how things are working, and then the support for all the different languages that you code. Those are some key things that your code editor should have. So when writing the web, here are some recommendations for you if you wanted to go out and learn these different ones. I personally use Brackets, which is a free open source one. You can find it at brackets.io. It's a great code editor. But other people use Atom, and they also really love that. You find that at atom.io. Or Carrot, which is found in the Chrome Web Store. This would be if you're on a Chromebook. And you can find that chrome.google.com/webstore/details/ a whole bunch of stuff there, as you can see for that URL. But if you want to type that in, you will get the Carrot code editor. Or if you just search for Carrot code editor in the Chrome Web Store, you should find that deal, okay, and be able to code on your Chromebook. That being said, what is a developer tool? And again, I'm going to show these sort of at the end, all in one big project that we're going to do together. A developer tool, each browser has a developer tool. In order to see the developer tool, you hit Control-Shift-I. So let's actually, I'm going to pull up the web here, and Control-Shift-I. And the moment I hit Control-Shift-I, you can see the development tools here. Now in Chrome, what's really nice is you could, and we always write websites mobile first, and then we build the other versions of the website. But you can actually pick the device that you're viewing the build or the website on, and then you can also view your code and check and see the debugging log and different things that are here, the console, for instance, and see your different pieces of code as they interact together. Okay, that's what and this, if you could also, another way to do this, let me hit close for a second, is if you right click and hit inspect. Notice Control-Shift-I, but you could just right click and hit inspect. That is a way to do. Now all browsers have this type of a tool. Edge has developer tools by hitting F12. Firefox has the Firefox development tool with Firefox, Firebug, Web Developer, FireHP, different subsequent things. So does Safari. For me, most people are going to either design in Safari or Chrome. I guess you could check if it works in IE, Internet Explorer, or Edge, whatever you want to do. You could check in these other browsers to make sure your website is good to go. But for most of us, we're going to just sit there and develop in Chrome and then check if it works in the other browsers as subsequently. Okay. So anyway, right click and inspect. That's how you get to the developer tool in Chrome. So what is HTML? It stands for Hypertextual Markup Language, and I already said that. This means that HTML is used to mark up content in order to explain what that content is and how it is related to other content on the page. And so I want to show you some rules that you must follow when writing HTML so that you can write good structured HTML. Okay. So 5 basic rules of HTML that I would start with if I had to show this to anybody. And the first is that characters live inside the angle brackets. Okay, now let me get my pointer tool here. All right, the characters live inside angle brackets. So when you write HTML, you're going to find that the different characters, whether it be a p tag, nav tag, whatever the tag is, there's lots of different tags, and they have a left and a right angle bracket on either side, and then the actual character goes inside the middle. So characters live inside angle brackets. That's basic rule number 1. Basic rule number 2, tags identify specific types of content. So here I have a paragraph tag, and you can see a lot of them are pretty easy to identify because they represent things. So it's almost like an abbreviation world, if you will, learning the different abbreviations of what they stand for. But once you start to see the structure of it, it starts to become very clear what the abbreviations stand for. Okay, so P stands for paragraph, like N, navigation, for instance. But again, they're all in these angle brackets, and this entire thing is called a tag. Okay, now you could also call it an element. So if I switch up and say a tag or element, they mean the same thing. But needless to say, these are called tags. And HTML is a language of tags, pretty much. Number 3, complete elements, also known as tags, are usually made up of two tags, an opening and a closing tag. But there are exceptions to the rule. And I'm not really going to get into too much of that right now on this slide, but there are exceptions to the rule. And but most tags have the opening and the closing tag. And the way you identify the closing tag is you see that that slash that's there. That is the closing tag. And so you would have the beginning P tag. You would write your paragraph, whatever that may be, and then you would have your closing tag if we were using the example of this specific element here. Okay. Now that being said, you can nest tags inside of tags. And so these are known as containers. HTML elements are nothing more than containers, therefore they can be stacked one inside another, much like Tupperware, like I was explaining in the beginning. Or if we wanted to get into like a food illustration, because who doesn't love food, right? You've got like your burger on the outside, and then you could have your lettuce, tomato, and your patty and everything, and your cheese stacked inside of the burger. Okay, so here's a good rule for yourself when you look at containers. Find the opening tag and then find the closing tag. Again, unless it's a specific tag that is does not follow the rule, and I will get into several of those as well. All right, so the element containing the previous tag is known as the parent element. So HTML is the parent element of body, and body is the parent element of the p tag, if we were to get technical. Okay, and by the way, that would also make body the child element of the HTML, and it would make p the grandchild element of HTML. But we won't get technical. We're not developing a family tree or anything here. Next, we have attributes and values. And so this is where code gets a little bit more complicated. The attribute name indicates what kind of extra information you are supplying about the element's content, and it should be written in lowercase. Now, all of this code should be written in lowercase unless specified here. And there are several things to write in uppercase, but it's rare. Most of the HTML language is written in lowercase, and that's because a lot of the web is written in lowercase. Even URLs are usually written in lowercase, at least when you buy a domain name or something like that. Okay. Secondly, under this point, the value is the information or setting for the attribute, and it should be placed in double quotes. So an example of this would be the HTML tag can have an attribute of a language, so lang is the abbreviation for that, and it can be equal to, and then in double quotes we would put English, en-us, and then we would close the tag. So all this is inside or encapsulated inside that one HTML tag, or known as an element, and there's an example of it there. So we have attributes lang equals a value en-us, and there's your example. All right, so let's actually type out some classwork here. And I'm going to throw this on one side of my screen and then pull up my code editor. Now, how did I get to this? What I did was I went to brackets.io and I downloaded brackets right here. And you can do that and install it on your computer before you get started. But I've already done that. And so here is my code editor right here. Okay, I'm actually going to drop it like that. Now, when you get into brackets, there's pretty much nothing here. So what you need to do is do File, New, and then you need to save your file. And so you save it as File, Save As. And for right now, we're not going to talk about directory structures because we haven't done that yet. So that'll be another period. We'll just go right to our desktop, and we're going to name it index.html. Now this would be known as the first page in a website. Is the home page is always named index.html, and press Save. So let's actually type out this website, okay? And I'm going to try to explain all these different parts in the next lesson. So for now, let's just type it. Doctype HTML, and then HTML. Now notice the color, and I'm pressing Enter to push down the tags. Okay, push them apart. And then I'm using the arrow keys to arrow up, and then I'm going to press Tab because it's always a good idea to tree your code inward. Okay, so I'm going to press Tab and move in, and then I'm going to nest my tags. So head, again, when I put that closing bracket on my keyboard, it gives me the second tag, the closing tag. And again, I press Enter and push it down, arrow up, and press Tab to move in, and then I'm going to put my title. So title, close the bracket, and my first website. Now this information in between the title tag right here is actual information that will show up on the website, and you will see that in a second in the browser tab. Okay, so I'm going to tab in here, and I'm going to do body. Again, closing tag, enter to push it down, arrow up, tab to push in, and then the P tag is the only one we have here. Okay, when I close the P tag, and then we're going to do another nesting here. Hello world. Because it's so traditional. When you write your website for the first time, you're supposed to say hello world. It's like an iconic thing. People do it, okay? And so I'm going to say my name is, and the strong tag. So strong. And again, this is all one line of code. So if it wraps, take no notice, just keep typing. David Wright. Okay, so that's all one line right there. That entire line right there is one line. Now you can press Control S, or you can hit File Save. And then, let's minimize these two. Your code should be sitting on your desktop if you spelled index.html right, and if you spelled all your other things right, your other tags. Now if you didn't, go back and check it, because you might have spelled it wrong. Just double click on the index.html file, and it should bring up this very simple web page. Now notice the browser tab is named My First Website, and notice that the words I wrote, hello, my name is, and there it is, David Wright. Now it's very small. I'm going to get Control plus and zoom in. But you can see the strong element bolded this, so obviously that's a tag we need to learn what it does. And we need to learn what the other tags do as well. And I have separate lessons for those. But needless to say, this is the simplest way that you can write an HTML page. It's not really a huge website. It's not like it's going to change the world, but it's really cool because you just wrote your first block of code and you were successful at it. And that's what's important. So hello world and your name, and hopefully you had fun doing this project, and I will see you in the next video.